people like Brown and Lange, who've gone so well in the qualifiers, weren't able to take the field. But Catalan have been dealing with injuries. There's no Remy Casti, for example. So I don't think that can be seen as an influence either way. But Greg Bird coming back in maybe can be seen as an influence.
Yeah, definitely.
Because any rare moments of skill from Catalan in the first half tended to be late offloads from Greg Bird.
Yeah.
And, a little bit of good stuff from Myler and Walsh here and there. They used all of that sort of pressure and stuff that they were creating in that first half to good effect in the second half, but the second half started like the first, with Lee executing a play reasonably well. Very good ball. I think it was Josh Drinkwater threw a cut out pass to James Clare, who got in the corner. But after that, Lee were not a factor in this game, other than that they kept coughing up possession or conceding penalties, legitimate penalties constantly. So much messing around at the ruck, so many high shots. There was one penalty that was unluckily given, I think, that led to position for a try for Catalan. But that only equalled out the possession that was unluckily given, to lead for one of the Lee tries, I think. Ben Failer tried to not give penalties, but he couldn't avoid it.
Yeah.
He did everything he could to not sim in a Lee player for persistent infringements in this game, including throwing him a penalty to break up the penalties the other way, I think. But basically, Catalan took absolute control, and although it took them a while to actually make that show on the scoreboard, by the end the scoreline did reflect their dominance. They were so much more disciplined. Like I say, they didn't concede too many penalties that were even really legitimate penalties.
Yeah.
They did try and offload occasionally, but they weren't silly with it. They weren't pushing things that weren't on in their own half or around the halfway. Do you know what I mean? They were controlled, they were sensible, they played with experience, with nous, without pace other than Lewis Tierney, but Lewis Tierney was able to take advantage of tiredness from all the defending Lee made themselves do. So well done to Catalan. They were by far the better team on the pitch in this game.
And again, this game is a microcosm of Lee's season. Off to a good start, fucked by ill discipline, dropped off and imploded badly.
Well, I was thinking about this, and didn't they only not finish bottom in the regular season because of the final round, when I think Widnes were kind of trying to get people fit because of all the injuries and issues they've had like that, rather than anything else?
I think so.
And then they only finished in 4th rather than 5th because Catalan didn't take any of the penalties at the end of last week's game, because a win would have been better for them than a draw, in terms of then they would have avoided the £1 million game. But if there was no £1 million game, they would have kicked the penalties to take the draw to finish in 4th anyway.
Yeah.
So I just think, on balance, on reflection, I think this is kind of where Lee
deserved to be. Over the piece, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Sadly, whatever.
But look, the infrastructure at Lee is there, the backing is there for them to take a tilt at getting promoted again.
I'm glad 6,500 people turned up, because they haven't had that enough games at all this year. It's still 2,000 down on the Catalan average, or 3,000 down on the Catalan average maybe. But there you go. Stats wise,
yes.
Errors and penalties were significant numbers in this game. We sort of mentioned each area really. Lee made 6 more of each, with 13-7 in errors and 12-6 in penalties, both counts going against them. That led to Catalan getting more ball, making 292 more metres, despite metres being a similar average gain and both sides only making 4 breaks. So it was really the ability to have the ball and make the ground that tired Lee out, and it was their own fault that happened. Individually, Lewis Tierney, 2 tries, 1 try assist, 127 metres, was very good. Really good in taking high kicks as well and getting on the front foot. Fuad Jarhart with a try and 110 metres, and he took one of the best takes you'll see all year when he ran off his wing to take one. Greg Bird 166 metres, Sam Mower 132 metres, Paul 8 on 44 tackles, 11 marker tackles.
Very good. And for...
I wonder if Catalan had gone down, then PNG wouldn't be selecting 8, or would they?
I think they probably would have found a way to break that policy.
For For Lee, Ryan Hampshire made 181 metres. A lot of that came on one big break he made that they weren't able to capitalise fully on. Glenn Stewart, 50 tackles and 11 marker tackles, so he got his work rate back up to where we saw it being last year in this game.
Yeah.
Just maybe not influenced enough games in enough ways for Catalan. For Lee, sorry. Sadly,
yeah, he's been a letdown. Not a letdown, but he's not... Well, he has been let down, hasn't he?
A little bit. You expected him to be a huge force in that side.
For this team. It was a huge signing when it was announced, wasn't it? Okay, so commiserations to Lee Cat, congratulations to the Catalan Dragons, but the £1 million game, debate rumbles on.
We got one from Track and Field at Warriors, but with numbers in both of those things, who said, is a one-off game for Super League survival really a way to treat players who put their bodies on the line all season? Families rely on their income.
Are we going to do all these, or should we address them individually?
Maybe address that one individually.
Look, I'm not a fan of the whole concept of P&R within our sport. Anyway, I don't think it necessarily needs it for the main reason, principally being financially. We're not Premiership football, we're not Premier League football, we're not the NFL where there is no relegation anyway, but we're not that highly paid that lads can drop out of a division and be set for life. You know, these are lads who are earning a decent wage, but it's not, it's not retire at the end of your career money.
No.
So I think more broadly, as this conversation unfolds over the next few minutes, you'll see why I think that franchising or licensing is the way to kind of sustain clubs for a protracted period of time, to allow teams to stabilise and develop things like a youth system and give some stability to players. And then when there's changes to be made after a nominal period of time, then it's teams that are coming into it that have proven that they are prepared to step up, and it is done in a way that allows these players not the uncertainty that this affords them.
Yeah, well, I've never been a huge advocate of P&R in our sport either, but sporting culturally in this country, it's almost a requirement. It feels like.
Yeah.
So I think we'd struggle to get away from having some form of it. And the way licensing worked wasn't the right formula for changing teams in the divisions, I didn't feel. I would be more set on just expanding the league every time we can afford to, if we didn't have promotion and relegation. But it's what we've got, and I don't think we're going to come up with a system that really removes it to anyone's satisfaction. What Roger said about relegation's relegation, well, you're treating people the same way. Relegation's relegation. Yeah, I suppose there's a slight extra element of everyone's going to watch them do it, but our game needs more exposure, needs more viewers, needs more finances, needs more money, everything like that. We don't have what football has, and we need to stop fucking like getting in our heads that we might somehow. Because we all love the game so much, we think it's huge, but this game is a minority sport, and we are possibly punching above our weight with the level of coverage we have. So we need to have big events to keep it going, to keep the drama. I mean, who would want to get rid of last year's £1 million game, really?
Exactly.
From the history of rugby league.
Yeah.
And to some extent this year's. It wasn't as dramatic and exciting, but there was tension in there.
As individual pieces of sporting drama, absolutely. But this is a broader question. This isn't a question of has the £1 million game in the specific time that it's been played provided entertainment? Of course it does.
Well, I think track and field's thing is kind of two different things, isn't it? Is a one-off game for Super League survival a way to treat players who put bodies on the line all season? Well, maybe not, but how do you not know that the last game could come down to it? We had the Castleford against Wakefield one. We had Huddersfield against Hull KR last year. We had Widnes against Catalan this year. Both games were sort of the same thing. And then the families rely on their income is a whole separate thing, because if you want, my family relies on my income, but if I'm not good enough at work, I
don't earn.
I don't earn more. Yeah,
exactly.
Lee Whitnell says, so after 3 seasons of £1 million games, it's as you were in Super League. I don't remember licensing in our sport, but if done sensibly, it feels like the best way forward. Having a meaningful part-time team competition under this, with its own trophies and prizes to play for, maybe before the Grand Final and Challenge Cup Final, etc., is surely better than the current system.
Well, I agree. To be honest with you, I don't want to sound like I'm copping out, but I agree with a lot of what Lee has to say there.
I think part of the thing is, I don't necessarily think when the Super League clubs voted it in, any of them ever expected to be threatened. I don't think they expected Lee's expenditure. Because let's face it, Lee nearly went out of business 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, they did.
I don't think they expected that to come up as it has. I think they sort of saw the progression of London being that they'll develop some talent from down there, but we'll take them all like
everyone,
like we had been doing. Wigan took Sargentson, Cass took McMeekan, etc. Saints
took Carsbrook, all that
stuff. So I don't necessarily think they thought the system would give a little bit of a boost for those lower clubs, but not necessarily see any of them truly threatened. Which is kind of how I saw it too. But what we haven't wagered for really was that London actually will improve, that Toulouse would come back in as a stronger entity, that we'd have the Toronto situation, and that Lee would spend what they spent. So we now have theoretically 4 ready-made clubs that could compete in Super League, given the resource of the top level funding and carrot that gives to players to play there. Toronto are proving you don't necessarily even need that carrot to get top talent. But we don't quite have enough resource in the game, be it money or players, yet to have a 16-team Super League. So you have to kind of go on. And I think we are because it will be team swapping. Because beyond that group, you don't have as many teams capable. But Featherstone wouldn't want to get rid of this system because it's really given them a boost. It means that they draw way better crowd and fan interest and stuff as the season draws towards an end. Same with Halifax. So these part-time clubs, who are the clubs who aren't really ever going to get in Super League potentially, are still loving the system because of what it brings to them. Now the people that don't love it is the Super League clubs that finish 9th and 10th and are threatened with relegation some weeks later, but they have such an advantage.
Of course they do, and they're over the
clubs below. They've got £1 million more central funding for a start.
Yeah, precisely. So it's palpable, isn't it?
David Pye got in touch as well. This was quite a longer one. He said, "Is the £1 million game a concept we want to keep? Should the league leaders carry more weight? Is the middle eights the long-term structure? Do we value it? We want promotion, relegation. We want drama to help sell the sport. We need intense games to gain interest. We want every minute to matter, etc. If we want these things, then we need to keep this format. There were complaints over the £1 million game being unfair as players are under stress, mental fatigue, have mortgages, families, etc. But we want promotion and relegation, which carries this pressure with it. If we eliminate doubt of promotion and relegation, then how do we make every game count?" I could go on, but hopefully I've made my point. We cannot have it both ways. Lee wanted the opportunity. Now they've seen it from both sides. My suggestion... So he's putting forward a different... Even though he says this structure's good, he's putting forward a new structure. My suggestion is 2 leagues of Super League with no promotion between Tier 2 and Tier 3, so the tier outside Super League. Reserve teams may be playing in Tiers 3 and 4, keeping the middle eights in a top 2 major leagues. Minor leagues have similar structure. This would reduce the risk of relegation to Super League 2. Yes, there are issues that would need addressing for this to work, but we can discuss this and overcome surrounding barriers. I think he needs to pad that out way more because I just got lost.
Wow.
But his overall point, I think,
Well, that is the point. We can't have our cake and eat it. We can't have our cake and eat it.
You might want to change it so it's the Super Sixes, so that the team that finish. So maybe only the top 6 play for the top thing, and you get 3 teams that season finish in July. They might not like that, but if you share central funding out, if you share gate revenue from the Super Sixes with those clubs anyway, they might be pacified that way. Then the 9th, so like 7th, 8th, 9th season ends, bottom 3 drop off, and only top 3 play. The minor tweaks, I'm talking about, but the basic format of this for me satisfies the most people.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Either way, we've got it for another year.
Yeah.
So let's enjoy it. Okay, that is your semi-finals and £1 million game taken care of. Let's take a look now at some results from elsewhere in the world of rugby league. Okay then, so to some results from elsewhere in the world of rugby league. It was the Championship Shield final this weekend, Mark, and perhaps unsurprisingly, Toulouse were victorious over Sheffield, 44 points to 14.
Yeah, well done to them.
Yes, Barrow confirmed their promotion to the Championship for next season, though, with a 10 points to 6 win over Whitehaven. So
close game, over 3,000 in. That's another sort of plus for positive for promotion and relegation, I suppose.
Yeah.